you're giving us this this fake, here's a piece of the budget, here's another. You're cutting, in the base budget, you're cutting shipbuilding in half and saying, well, we're going to make it up in reconciliation. Are we going to have reconciliation every year, which basically, by the way, puts a significant part, 10 or 15% of the defense budget, in a wholly partisan decision-making process, whereas in the history of this committee, it's always been bipartisan. Why are we doing it this way?
Senator, from our view, the budget number 961 meets the requirements and threats that we face. And
that's not the number. The number is 892.6. You're adding reconciliation. That's my whole point. Why not give us a base budget of 961 or whatever the right number is, what you consider the right number, and then we can operate and make our decisions. Why do it in this bifurcated way that really is fooling the American people about what the defense budget is?
We're not trying to fool anybody, sir. It's two bills, one budget. We're working with OMB, and we feel very comfortable with the number of 961 billion.
Why don't you give us a straight-up budget for the Defense Department?
Pete Hegseth walked into that hearing expecting routine questions about defense policy. Instead, he faced Senator Angus King, who came in ready to tear apart both the budget gimmicks and the military's strange obsession with Confederate names. This wasn't a calm exchange. It was a clash that exposed how Washington hides the truth about money and history.
Mr. Secretary, I'm somewhat puzzled. I grew up in Virginia, where Robert E. Lee was revered. I think when I was a kid, his birthday was a school holiday. But as I grew older and learned more about American history, I learned that he fit the classic definition of a traitor. He took up arms against his country. He broke his oath as a member of the United States Army, which he took upon entering his career at West Point. Why are you going through these incredible gymnastics, finding current soldiers or other soldiers to rename? And you slipped a minute ago. You said we're returning these bases to their original names. Robert E. Lee, leading general of the Confederacy, Pickett, the other names. Why are you doing this? I don't understand what the motivation is to rename bases for people who took up arms against their country on behalf of slavery. What possible motivation can there be for this? Who is telling you to do this? Who is urging you to do this?
Senator, the veterans and service members across the country who have deployed from Fort Bragg or Fort Benning or Fort Hood or Fort Pickett, there's a legacy, there's a connection to those bases and to those places, to what they trained for there, what they did for, and what they came home back to. That matters to them. Ask enough of them, as I do, all the time, before and later. And we recognize the service of those who were put into the replacement. No one's disputing that. I would never dispute that. What we're looking at is erasing history, erasing names, erasing base names that service members are tied to.
Talk
to people that serve at Bragg. Ask people that serve at Fort Bragg or Fort Benning if they like the fact that the names have been returned. And to a man and to a woman, they will tell you, thank God we're back to Fort Bragg, and thank God we're back. And thankfully, because so many men and women in this country have served, there's a Benning and a Bragg and a Pickett and a Hood has a Silver Star or a Medal of Honor that we could rename the base to because of the limits of what Congress allowed us to do. So this is something we've been proud to do, something that's important for the morale of the Army, and those communities appreciate that we've returned it back to what it was instead of trying to play this game of erasing names.
We're not erasing history, Mr. Secretary. We're recognizing history and recognizing that mistakes have been made in this country. The greatest of all was the Civil War, where people took up arms against their country on behalf of the institution of slavery. And to continue the practice of recognizing those people and honoring them by the naming of these bases is, I believe, an insult to the people of the United States. Let me talk about the budget. I don't understand why the budget is coming to us in two pieces. Why not give us an honest base budget instead of putting a piece of it in reconciliation? As I understand it, OMB is saying we're going to have a flat defense budget for the next 4 or 5 years. Are we planning reconciliation every year from now on? Why not give us an honest budget telling us what your priorities are, and then we can consider it. This committee always works in a bipartisan basis on the defense budget. We all want to see some increases in the defense budget.
King started with the history lesson. He grew up in Virginia, where Robert E. Lee was treated as a hero. Lee's birthday was a school holiday. Statues stood on every corner, but King made it clear that growing up with that reverence didn't change the facts. Lee wasn't a misunderstood Southern gentleman. He was a West Point graduate who swore an oath to defend the United States, then broke that oath and led a violent rebellion. That rebellion wasn't about states' rights or honor. It was about defending slavery. King called it exactly what it was: treason. And he wanted to know why the Pentagon and people like Pete Hegseth were twisting themselves into knots to bring back names of traitors.
Senator, this is a straight-up budget for the Defense Department, and it's a
It is
13%
not.
increase over what Joe Biden gave us.
It is a two-part defense budget. Part of it is in reconciliation instead of in the budget that's being presented to this committee. This committee only has a partial review of the budget. I don't understand why we can't have an honest, straightforward budget instead of this son of Oko that you're putting over on us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The room went quiet when King asked why the Army needed to rename bases to honor men who literally fought against the United States. Why celebrate betrayal? Why honor leaders who raised weapons against American soldiers? What message does it send when the names plastered on Army bases are the same names of those who tried to destroy the Union? For King, the issue wasn't erasing history. The issue was refusing to glorify it. History belongs in books and museums. It doesn't belong on the gates of modern military installations where Americans train to defend the country. Hegseth didn't have a clean answer. He pointed to veterans who served at places like Fort Bragg and Fort Benning. He said soldiers feel a connection to those names. He said morale depends on tradition. But that answer only made King push harder. A connection to a base doesn't come from a Confederate general's name. It comes from the people who trained there, fought there, and sacrificed there. Renaming bases doesn't erase history. It redefines it. It reminds soldiers that loyalty is to the Constitution, not to the men who betrayed it. Then King shifted to the budget. His frustration was boiling. He accused the Defense Department of playing games with reconciliation, slicing the budget into two parts so the full truth never shows up on paper. The official budget number was around $890 billion. Then the administration added another $70 billion through reconciliation tricks, ballooning the real number past $960 billion. King called it dishonest. He said it was fooling the American people, making it look like the Pentagon was getting less than it actually was. King wasn't asking for miracles. He was asking for honesty. He said the Armed Services Committee has always worked on budgets in a bipartisan way. Both parties agree the military needs funding. Both sides want troops supported, but splitting the budget into two piles, one transparent and one hidden in reconciliation, shifts decisions into a partisan process and strips away accountability. He pressed Hegseth directly. Why not give Congress a single straight budget? Why create confusion? Why make lawmakers and taxpayers dig through gimmicks to see the real number? Hegseth tried to defend it. He said it was still one budget, just two bills. He said the numbers add up to meet America's threats. But the King wasn't having it. He pointed out the cuts to shipbuilding. He pointed out the risk of hollowing out readiness. He called it a fake budget. He said Americans deserve better than tricks with trillion-dollar spending. By the end, the hearing wasn't about just numbers or base names. It was about values. Angus King made the point clear. America cannot glorify traitors and cannot tolerate games with the defense budget. Soldiers deserve honesty. Taxpayers deserve clarity. And the country deserves leaders who don't hide betrayal behind tradition or disguise spending behind reconciliation. Pete Hegseth had no real defense. What unfolded wasn't a debate. It was a dismantling.